Hey, it's Sela Social Studies.
Hey guys, welcome back to Sela's Social Studies. Alright, so today we're going to be covering the 7 Years' War. As I left the southern colonies, I talked about the natives and their clashes with the English settlers and their colonization and their movement westward. So now we're going to talk about that westward movement, who is fighting who, and what it leads to the 7 Years' War. So the conflicts between the French and British over territories had been a European affair for many years. France and England seem to have always been at war with each other in their respective histories. Now, with the settling of new territories, the colonies and beyond, conflicts between the British and the French moved far beyond the European boundaries. The struggle for global superiority between Britain and France was boiling over in Europe for decades before it spilled over into North America. The final stage of this conflict was a war in North America called the 7 Years' War. After the war solidified Britain as the dominant global leader, the expansion of territories and the colonial rebellion led to the Revolutionary War. So what was the colonies or North America like before the war? Like, why did the war begin? And as farmers continued to farm tobacco on their plantations, exports of the crop leveled out. When the price of tobacco was not as lucrative as it was before, it started to become a stagnant crop. There was not as much money being made on what most plantation owners could grow. More and more settlers arrived in the colonies from Europe, and there was just not enough land to be spread among the wealthy farmers to continue to be prosperous. Planters wanted more land. Planters needed more land to make more money. These plantation owners wanted to begin the westward migration into the Ohio River Valley to expand their land ownership and increase their plantation sizes. The land in the Ohio River Valley was very fertile and would be able to produce more tobacco and drive the price of tobacco up. The underlying issue was that the French had already claimed the Ohio River Valley, and now the British wanted in on that prime land. The clash over this land in the Ohio River Valley led to the North American portion of the 7 Years' War. The North American part of this war was given another name. It was called the French and Indian War. And why was it called the French and Indian War? Both the British and the French allied themselves with different Native American tribes during the 7 Years' War. The French aligned themselves with the Hurons, and the British aligned themselves with the Iroquois. These native alliances gave the 7 Years' War that name, the French and Indian War. As this lesson is taught, it is taught from the side of the British, seeing as they are the winners of the war, and history is always written by the winners. That's why it's called the French and Indian War. This war was fought between the British, and it was against the French and Indians, hence the French and Indian War. After the war was over, the colonists began the movement westward without the permission of the king. The alliances with the natives caused tension between Britain, who was allies with the natives, and the colonists who wanted their land. So this battle over land, this 7 Years' War, ended with the British victory. On February 10, 1763, the Treaty of Paris was signed, ending the conflict, and Britain was able to control all of France's land holdings in colonial America, which spanned from the Mississippi River to the Appalachian Mountains into northern Canada. The British, who were originally in control of the 13 colonies that were located on the eastern seaboard, are now in control of all the lands east of the Mississippi River, and Spain is the country that controls everything to the west of the Mississippi River. Now there are only two major powers in North America. And now that all this land was in royal hands, the colonists felt that it was their right to move into the Ohio River Valley and to continue all the way to the Mississippi River. The king was fearful that if the colonists moved west, that would interrupt the royal native fur trade, and that the colonists and natives would continually to get into armed conflicts, resulting in the king having to send troops to the colonies to end these conflicts between the colonists and the natives, and that would be expensive. These fears caused King George III to pass the Royal Proclamation of 1763. The proclamation prohibited movement west of the Appalachian Mountains, which upset many colonists who wanted to increase their land and their wealth. Thousands of colonists defied the law moving west to claim land for themselves. The Royal Proclamation of 1763 is the first cause of many causes of the colonists' revolution against the British Crown. Now that the French and Indian War, or 7 Years' War, is over, Britain and the king really believe that they control that land to the Mississippi. Now, the issue here is the colonists. These colonists don't feel like they're part of Britain anymore. They've been here in North America for so long, and you'll see coming up in the next chapter what's going to happen when the king is like, hey, this war we just fought, the war that I sent troops over there to protect you, I need you to pay me back. And we'll see what happens, what the colonists do in response to that.